back, guys. So today we'll finish up our circles unit, 10.7 here, seven version of it, our seventh lesson. So 10.7, we want to write and graph equations of circles. So we're going to go completely different than what we've been doing. We've been staying away, but now we're going to start dealing with coordinate planes again and how to graph and figure out where this circle is. This will seem a little bit easier than the last two lessons because we're so full of information. We're going to just stick with this. All right, so if you remember way back in algebra, we gave you standard forms of certain things, like the standard form of a line. Y equals ax plus b, or y equals mx plus b. That's your standard form. Or well, that was ax plus by equals c standard form. But if you think of it, y equals mx plus b, you learn that. Slope-intercept. Circles have the exact kind of same thing. Now, if you think about it, go back to point slope, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And that is actually more in line with what you're going to see with a circle than you do with just a linear line. So if you think of it that way, that's, you have a point subtracted from y and an x coordinate subtracted from an x. That's going to give it. So it looks very similar to that in that a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And you're saying, oh my gosh, there's 5 letters now appearing on this. Well, don't panic, okay? Do not panic, because just like you were looking at point slope, there were 5 letters in that one. You had a y and a y1, 2 different things. You had an m, which you knew was slope, and an x minus x1. And you knew the y1 and the x1 were a coordinate. Well, guys, guess what? X and y are basically the same thing you saw in a slope of a line and everything. They're just going to be y and x. They're just, some point will be contrived from the equation. H and k is my center. It's a coordinate. It's like x1 and y1 in our point slope form. So H and k is our center. It's a coordinate. It's a point. And then r, guys, if you haven't guessed it, r is your radius. R is the radius. So it's pretty simple. R squared, the radius squared, is equal to the difference of x's squared plus the difference of y squared. And if you really, really think about it, guys, the radius is basically equal to the distance formula, because if I put a square root over all of this, it's r equals the difference of 2x squared plus the difference of 2y squared, which is basically the distance formula all over again. But we're just taking away the square root. We just don't need it for a circle. So you'll learn more about that as you get older, but that's something to always kind of keep in mind. If you remember that as you get to upper classes, it's going to serve you well. All right, so we're going to go straight into graphing it based on the equation, and you're going to have to tell me the center and the radius. So here's a basic equation. I give you x plus 3 squared plus y squared equals 16. Now we're going to start with the center. And so if you remember, my formula is x minus h, y minus k. So basically, guys, what number is being subtracted from x? Or if you want to think of it a different way, what number could I plug in for x to make this 0? Where would it equal 0? And in this case, my x would be -3. For y, what number am I subtracting from y? Well, I'm not subtracting any number y, so I'm automatically subtracting 0. Or what number could I plug in for y to make it 0? Or make that part 0? So 0 squared is 0. So on my graph at -3, 0, I'm going to put a dot. So I got my centers, -3, 0. Now what's my radius? Well, r squared is equal to 16. So we take the square root of that, and r equals 4. Since we're not going to do the negative version because we're talking about a distance here, we're only going to go with the positive. So my radius is 4. Now how does that translate to the graph? Well, guys, since my center is there, and the definition of circle is all points equidistant from a central point or center, we're just going to go 4-way in all directions from R. Now, I'm not going to go in all directions. I'm going to put 4 points down. I'm going to go up, down, left, and right. 4 spaces. So up, down, left, and right. So I get my 4 dots, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to connect those dots with a circular pattern. Now, I don't expect you to be perfect with it. I'm not going to be perfect with it, but just do your best to make a circle. Do not draw straight lines because, again, that's not a circle. That would be more of a rhombus or a square. You want to do it that way. So you just do it for around. All right, let's look at the second one. The second one here, x plus 1 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 9. So again, let's start with my center. What point am I subtracting from x? Or what point could I plug in for x? What number would give me 0? In this case, it's -1. And since it's the same thing for y, that's at -1. So at -1, -1, I'm going to put my dot. And then r squared, my radius, is equal to 9. So again, take square root of that, and we get r equals 3. So I'm going to graph from my center, 3 up, 3 down, 3 left, 3 right. So 1, 2, 3, dot, 1, 2, 3, dot, 1, 2, 3, dot, 1, 2, 3, dot. And in a circular motion, create my circle. I know, doesn't look perfect, but none of us are. All right, here's another one, another example. X plus 2 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 4. All right, my center, -2, -4. And then my radius, and I'm going to skip the r squared equals 4. We know it's just square root of 4, which is 2. So at -2, -4, put my dot. And we're going to go 2 away in all directions. 2, 2, 2, and 2, up, down, left, right. Make a little circle. And there we go, and voila. So you see here, it's not too bad. Once you're given the equation, it works pretty fast. All right, here we go. One more example. X squared plus y squared equals 25. All right, center, very simple. Since there's nothing being added or subtracted to x, it's 0. Same thing for y. So we know my origin is my center. And then, of course, square root of 25 is 5, so my radius is 5. So we're going to positive 5, -5, -5, and positive 5 all the way around. And we're going to do our best to draw a circle through those points. Not a bad job. And we get that. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. So now, instead of giving you the equation and you graphing it, we want you to find me the equation given certain information. So the first one here is we're going to give you the center, we give you the radius, we just want you to write the equation. So if you remember, my equation here is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And remember, h and k is my center. So in this case, I can write this as x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals h squared, which would be 64. And you do want to put it as 64, not h squared. Or you can write it as x squared plus y squared equals 64. Either of those is acceptable in this case. All right, let's look at the second one here. We got the center is 14, -12, and my radius is 5. So we're going to go x minus my center point. In this case, it's 14 squared plus y minus a -12. So when you subtract the negative, we're actually adding 12 squared. And then my radius squared, 5 squared, which is 25. So pretty straightforward how to do it given the center and the radius. All right, now looking at number 7. Number 7 is a little bit different. They give us the center 0, 0, and they give us a point on the circle. Well, wait a minute. We've been given the radius, but now we're just given a point on the circle. Well, if we know the center and we're given a point on the circle, we can find the radius. We're going to use the distance formula. But if you remember what I told you at the very beginning, is that the distance formula is basically the exact same thing as the circle formula, except that we don't have a square root on it. But here's my question. Do I need r or do I need r squared? I need r squared. So I actually do not need to do the square root part. I just need to do the first half of my circle formula using the center as h and k, and my point on the circle as x and y. So if you think about it, center is h, k, and my circle is x, y, and I can use that to solve for r squared because that's what I need for my formula. And then if I really want the radius, I can take the square root of that number when I get to it. So if we think about x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, well, if my x is negative 10 minus 0 squared plus y, 5 minus k, 0 squared equals r squared, well, that's negative 10 squared plus 5 squared equals r squared. That's 100 plus 25. So r squared equals 125. Now, if I really want the radius, I can take the square root of that, which is 5 root 5. But I don't need to because I need r squared. I don't need r. I need r squared for my formula. And so now I can just rewrite my formula as x squared, because I'm subtracting 0, plus y squared, same reasoning, equals 125. And there we go. Because I don't need r, I just need r squared. Now, if I ask for the radius, that would be something different. You can find that by taking the square root of 125. All right. So let's look at another example of this. Here we go. Center is negative 13, 3, and the point on the circle is negative 11, 1. So I have the center and a point. Again, given the center, I'm good. But I need r squared. So again, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So I'm going to use that formula again. So here we go. H, k, x, y. So negative 11 minus a negative 13, which would be plus squared, plus 1 minus 3 squared equals r squared. So negative 11 plus 13, that is 2 squared plus negative 2 squared. Well, that just ends up being 4 plus 4 equals r squared. So r squared is equal to 8. So now I can write my formula. X minus negative 13, which would be plus 13 squared, plus y minus 3 squared equals my r squared, which is 8. And there is my answer. So I don't have to overdo the mathematics in this. Just realize what I'm looking for. All right. A little bit more complicated. Now, I'm given the ends of a diameter, negative 5, negative 1, and 15, negative 7. This is probably where it gets most complicated because now we have to bring in another formula that we know before. We got the ends of the diameter, but what we don't have is my center. And I need my center to find my r squared. Now, no reason to do distance formula with this and then take half of it and square it. Find the midpoint. Midpoint formula. And if you don't remember your midpoint formula, it is the average of your x's and the average of your y's. x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. So my center is my midpoint of my points at the end of my diameter. So in this case, negative 5 plus 15 over 2, comma, negative 1 plus negative 7 over 2. In this case, we get 10 over 2, comma, negative 8 over 2, which 5, comma, negative 4. So already, before I even begin, I know my equation is going to be x minus 5 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals whatever my r squared is. So I got my first half of my equation. Now I need to find r squared. And I'm going to do exactly what I just did previously, but I'm going to take my 5, negative 4, and I'm going to use either negative 5, negative 1, or 15, negative 7. Either one is fine. It's going to give you the same answer. I'm going to use negative 5, negative 1 because they're smaller numbers. I'd rather use that than the bigger numbers. But it doesn't matter. So x, so again, there's an x, there's a y. Negative 5 minus 5 squared plus negative 1 minus 4, so it's plus 4 squared equals my r squared. Negative 10 squared plus 3 squared. That's 100 plus 9. So 109 equals r squared, and that's what I want on the end, 109. And there's my answer. X minus 5 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 109. All right, we're going to do one more here. Basically the same thing. Ends in diameter 8, negative 14, and negative 3, 5. We want to find my center. So we're going to find the midpoint. So in this case, 8 plus negative 3 over 2, comma, negative 14 plus 5 over 2. So we end up with 5 halves, comma, negative 9 over 2. Woo! We got fractions. We got to deal with fractions. So let's go ahead and write it in. We get x minus 5 over 2 squared plus y plus 9 over 2 squared equals some r squared. All right, so here's my h, there's my k, and I'm going to use 3 and negative 3 and 5 as my x and y. I don't want to use 8 from negative 14. And you can, again, either one point. I'm going to use those. So, given that, here we go. Negative 3 minus 5 over 2 squared plus 5 plus 9 over 2 squared equals my r squared. All right, I'm going to convert to common denominators. It's negative 6 over 2 minus 5 over 2 squared plus 10 over 2 plus 9 over 2 squared. So that gives me negative 11 over 2 squared plus 19 over 2 squared. So this is going to be a little bit big, but we should be able to square all those numbers. Negative 11 over 2 squared, so 11 squared is 121. 2 squared is 4 plus 19 squared. That is 361 over 4. That gives me r squared. So 121 plus 361, that is 482 over 4 equals r squared. And 484 over 4, that reduces to 241 over 2 equals r squared. So I have my r squared. Again, I don't need to do the square root of anything. I don't need to plug it any more than that. That's what I was looking for. So on the end of my equation, 241 over 2. And there is my answer. All right. So until next time, guys, I'll see you later.